He's in the corner over here. He's with the scenic group. He's on our committee, and a very valuable member of our committee. Stan sent me a little bit of information on him to read to you tonight, just to give you a bit of his background. Stan is a custodial supervisor for the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. Stan has been on a creativity and leadership journey within his department and for himself for almost 30 years. Thinking outside the box is only the beginning for Stan, and trying to be on the edge of ways to accomplish more through partnership, collaboration, and forward thinking is his goal. He is always trying to make sure to put words into actions and see that as the key to building connections and tapping into creative and imaginative resources in everyone he encounters. The title of Stan's discussion tonight is Creativity and Imagination Somewhere in a Mop Bucket. Without further ado, Stan, I'm passing it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, very much. That was really nice. All right, and I'm hoping that for everybody, this is going to be kind of an interesting journey. It's going to be a little bit all over the place, but as I'm starting to see as we kind of continue to venture down this road, that the journey to creativity is never really a straight path, right? And frankly, opening up this conference will kind of serve me right for missing a planning meeting. So we'll see how this kind of all goes, right? So needless to say, I put everything in my calendar after this one, right? So, but it is an honor and a privilege to be with you all. And I'm very thankful that you've joined us tonight. So let me dive in here. So in my little write-up about this, I wrote creativity and imagination somewhere in a mop bucket. So that is obviously the title of my talk tonight. The description that I sent in the email said, taking a look at creativity and imagination from an everyday perspective. We tend to, when talking about the subject of creativity and imagination, focus on the arts and education. This discussion will take a look at the everyday places that imagination and creativity come into play in roles not typically looked at as creative, putting the talk into motion and seeing your imagination played out. Well, that is what I came up with about what I'm going to talk about. And looking back, I kind of have to laugh a little bit because frankly, that's a bunch of very easy things to say. That's the kind of thing you say when you need to quickly come up with a title description when you've been procrastinating on focusing on it, having some internet issues because of where I live, and generally getting tied up with work. That's the kind of thing you say when you want to sound smarter than you feel at the moment. Even when I hit the send button on that email, I wasn't sure, but I was past doing the submission and the time was up. The time, I didn't think it was very creative or imaginative. And in fact, it sounded rather quick, but it was done. And I had to own it and then figure out what I was going to say beyond that point. How do I bring it back into my reality, into your reality, and into our reality for the next little while? Well, when it all comes down to it, I guess, even in that, there was some creativity. Well, at least if anything, there was some imagination. But what really can be said about a lifetime of living, working, parenting, and wondering after all of this time, where is my creativity? Where is my imagination? Because this for me is a constant question. How can I be creative when I barely have enough time to do what I need to do, never mind being artsy of some sort? How can I ponder that, or how can I find that when sometimes I can barely find the keys for my car? I don't view myself generally as creative. I don't really have an imagination if I think too hard about it either. I don't do a job that requires me to be constantly creative, I don't think. And certainly using my imagination at work might lend me to probably not be at work, but there has to be something. So as I was thinking about what I was going to talk about, I did a life review to see where did this all begin? Where did things kind of take on a need or a want to tap into some inner creativity if I actually had any? And where in the world and imagination at this time of my life might come from? So what better place to start than looking back to when I was a child? What a time. The only worries I had was when was playtime, when was dinner, and worrying about when it was bath time, maybe. That was a world of imagination, a world of creativity, creating little worlds that my Matchbox or Hot Wheels cars could play in. building things out of Lego, and not just what was on the box, but creating new things because now you had different pieces. Sitting for hours designing crazy things if you could on an Etch-a-Sketch, or even using those little colored pegs to poke designs into a light bright. That was a whole existence, a time based on and being creative with your activities, being imaginative in my play, and simply just taking the world by storm. But alas, as I grew up, and as we all do, playtime ceases to exist less and less. My immediate thoughts don't seem to come to my ability to use my imagination. Sure, as a teen, I got pretty creative and imaginative on how I can duck and cover. But the older you get, it all just seems to fade away somewhere into the background. So as I continued to review my life, I thought somewhere it was lost, but it has to be found somewhere. So let's see where it is then. By trade, I'm a custodian. Not a job by choice per se, but one by chance. I say chance because for the most part, no one looks at that job as a career choice. Yes, to be clear, I chose the job and didn't stumble upon it by accident. But you're not going to hear some 10-year-old you're not going to hear some 10-year-old say when you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? They're never going to sort of shout out, I want to be a janitor, or I want to be a custodian or a housekeeper. This isn't the type of work that people dream of. It's not the type of work you go to school for 3 to 4 years. And it's definitely not the type of work you do if you want to look for a cushy desk job. So for me, I got into this because I heard it paid reasonably well at the time. And it was fairly simple. Clean up after people. Don't need to be overly social. You work mainly at night by yourself, and is great for the antisocial personality type who just wants to work, get paid, and go home. So the question is, how do you find creativity in a mop bucket, as the title says? Well, let me explain. Cleaners, custodians, housekeeping staff, and even janitors aren't something you typically think of. If you work in an office environment, you may see them, you may not. If you have ever been in a hotel or a resort, you may think about them when you leave a tip if they've done a good job in the room, or when checking out, or if they've folded those really nifty towel things in the Caribbean islands or whatnot. If you work in a school, you may be more apt to see your custodian then. But mainly, and unfortunately, the job is such that it's really done out of sight, out of mind. That is the nature of the work. People use a space, make natural messes, and somebody has to clean them up. Generally, you don't want someone cleaning it up while you're using it. So the job exists outside of normal hours and kind of has a Keebler Elves component to it. You leave a mess when you go and find it clean when you come back. To give you an example of the disconnect that can happen many times in my past, when everyone was returning after the summer break at my school, you'd hear stories of their summer adventures, and we were gathering in the staff room around the water cooler, so to speak, and people are talking about their vacations and what they did with their families and the wonderful trips that they've had. And when it finally came around to me and my coworkers, and they'd ask us what we'd done all summer, they were often shocked to find out that our summer wasn't filled with lots of adventures and lots of excitement, but was filled with very hot days and no air conditioning, worth of scrubbing down toilets and cleaning desk bottoms and scraping gum off of lockers and shampooing carpets. So it was kind of funny to watch the look of surprise that was on their faces, because they often wondered who might have done this, but were shocked to find out that it was us. But someone had to do it. So for me, I looked at the job as a high school student at the time as a way to make lots of money doing something that was relatively easy and didn't take a lot of thinking, or so I thought. Cleaning, as I found out, is more than just dusting, wiping, and mopping something. I've seen janitors on TV. We all have. I knew the drill. Grab a floor buffer and buff a hallway. That looked easy enough. But cleaning apparently is an art form in itself. None of us do it the same way. Only the end outcome is the expectation. Make sure it's clean. So day in and day out, there I was cleaning. Some days I would start this way. Other days I would start that way. And as each day passed, I could see that the easy way out wasn't going to be an exciting one. Something kind of had to change. So it was then, in what I thought was my lazy way out in life, that some level of creativity was born. Well, at least maybe at the point I thought I could recognize it. So as I stood beside my custodial cart in the middle of the hallway on a rainy October evening, I looked down into the bottom of my mop bucket and I literally stared at the water. And there, in the bottom of the darkened mop bucket water, my creativity and imagination was found. In all places, there it was. So let me roll back a bit. So as a student, I wasn't one to pay much attention to things I wasn't interested in. I'm not surprised, and maybe some of you won't be either by the time you hear all of this. Oddly, as an adult, that isn't any different. If I wasn't deemed necessary by me to learn, then I didn't absorb it well. Algebra, dissecting things, marketing, none of it seemed relevant to what I wanted to do in life. Be rich and never work. But apparently, though, in order to be rich and never work, you need to actually work to get rich to not work. So once I quickly figured that out, that sounded like work in and of itself. So that idea got scratched. So the goal simply became, I got to just simply get out of school. What was the fastest way to do that without having to learn much more than what was necessary? So coasting through school, and thankfully I did graduate, I quickly saw that work was going to get me at least some money. So in came the custodial job for my school board. Nothing like wanting to get out of school in a real big hurry, only to end up working back in a school for the rest of your life. All right. When they say you never stop learning, get out of school and work directly in one, that becomes extremely clear and true all the time. So in my cleaning job, I figured that was kind of going to be the end of the road. Clean for life, same routines every day. But like I said, I could quickly see that in everything I did, there was some level of creativity. For each different area that I had to clean up required something different to be done. For each person's room, there were different touches. You picked up ways to do it faster, better, with less effort, but more skill. I picked up different tools and ideas to do the job more efficiently. You learned who appreciated what and how the little touches made a world of difference, even if they didn't always notice. But I noticed, and it started to become an art for me. I was seeing that over time, if they didn't actually notice often, then doing anything for them didn't seem to make much sense. Not cleaning it at all wasn't going to get me anywhere. So it came down to simply doing it for myself. How I cleaned the windows mattered. How clean could I get the floor was a goal. Noticing every speck of dust was a challenge. I looked at the job not as a service job, but more of a self-serving way of creating cleanliness in spaces that it did not exist. It brought a joy to an otherwise routinely boring job. To me, that was creativity in motion. But in doing all of that, some sideline things started to happen that I wasn't necessarily anticipating. My antisocial career choice started to become more and more social. As the things I was doing to please me were starting to be noticed by the people I was doing it for, I started to interact more with the different staff members in the school. The students and the parents started to know me, and the staff started to know me more as well. And a sense of belonging was starting to grow, a sense of ownership, a partnership. The more I knew the people I was working for and with, is the more I appreciated the fact that I was working with them. The more I wanted to do a better job for them, which in turn gave me a sense of doing a better job for me. It became a real circle of engagement. My natural apparent ability to connect with people started to put me into situations within my environment that kind of opened doors I wasn't expecting. I started to work outside of my box. My confines of my cleaning job were quickly having the floodgates open from building the relationships simply inside my school. I was soon being asked to help with things, and not just custodial things like sweeping up emergencies or cleaning a spill or fixing a zipper. This was bigger than that. I would go swimming as a helper adult for one of our specialized classrooms because I developed relationships with the students in that room. I was soon helping in the computer lab, and shortly after that, I was soon running the computer lab alongside the teacher librarian until that role actually became one of my jobs during the daytime, opposite of my cleaning job at night. I helped fully transition our entire school from hard drive based or storage rather to a network system long before the centralized servers and the existence of Google. We've moved from Macintosh computers almost entirely over to PCs just based on how we had managed to set that up. I then branched out into DJing and doing jump rope for Hart School and even some of the schools in our area. I was part of a coordinating team for a Guinness Book of Records event where we had 5 separate schools drop into the snow that year and did the most amount of snow angels done at any one given time. Finally, all out of my one little school, I was part of a team in contact with the International Space Station on several occasions. All from opening my box did so much spill out. And from there, I moved on to several other schools and taking with me the skills and ideas from my first location. I moved through the other schools, continuing to do what I was doing, but I was adding more. I was part of a mentoring committee, developing and presenting workshops to train other custodial leaders. From there, I was asked, along with one of my coworkers, to present our training that we were doing for our staff to upcoming principals and vice principals and talk about the importance of our job as part of the importance of their job in their mentoring training. At one of my last elementary school locations I worked in before I moved into the secondary school system, I was responsible for doing the morning announcements and several of the daily ones. I loved my staff there because nobody in the office made announcements unless I was off sick. But part of what I did was I was responsible for making sure that everybody received the information that they needed for the day. I would let everybody know if it was an indoor recess or not, and just, the usual routine announcements. But what I started to do was I told a joke of the day that had everybody sitting on edge. And sometimes the jokes were good and sometimes they were bad, but the jokes had parents lining the office each morning to listen, as well as the school full of children. I created a system within our PA system that actually allowed me to do the morning announcements from any classroom in the school I wanted to, or sometimes I'd simply do them by wandering the hallway and reading the paperwork in front of me. It was an experience to be the voice of that school, because let me tell you, there is nothing like telling an absolutely horrible joke and hearing 700 kids boo in a school that's almost 70,000 square feet. It was absolutely amazing. You could feel the building rumble, and equally so when they cheered if I actually found a joke that was kind of funny. Very rare, but it was awesome, to say the least. And in all that time, the least thing my job had become was just a cleaning job. It had become an experience. From something so small and seemingly insignificant, a hiding place for me and a supposed easy way out. So much came out of that and continues to do so. So as I look back, I ask, where was the creativity? Well, it was everywhere and in everything. But how is it then that in all of that, I can sometimes sit here and question, why don't I feel creative? How come I don't have an imagination like everyone else? Well, even in my current role as a custodial supervisor, I'm responsible for 26 different physical schools within my district in the east end of our city. It's my job to be responsible for the custodial and maintenance staff that work at each school, and I work in conjunction with the principal and other administration at the schools to ensure that the building is operating and delivering a good user experience for the people within it. So as I say in my area, the principal runs the school and I run the building. So even in that, there is some creativity that abounds. You learn each day how to use your imagination to say no in many different ways. You figure out in a pinch how to speak with parents, the public, and trustees to not only get the information that you need from them, but deliver it back to them in a timely manner. You creatively find solutions to angry staff members who hear you, but aren't always listening. You grow to see that each day is not only a challenge to overcome, but an adventure in how you can use your mind, spirit, and emotions in a way that not only forwards the goal and the mission of the board, but brings people alongside even when they don't necessarily want to swim in the pool that's provided. It is an art form to communicate, but how easily is that missed when you aren't looking for it? We tend to look at creativity as something simply relegated to some art that is clearly defined. We see the painters and the sculptors and the musicians and the actors, and we go, wow, look at that creativity. I wish I could paint like that, or mold like that, or play like that. There are emotions in those things. There's a passion. You can see the imagination at play in those things. And you'll often hear about the tone or the feeling that's generated in that type of creativity. And for those of you that were here with us last night, we went through two different presentations within one that spoke about those things, because you know the feeling. When you sit and listen to your favorite style of music, or take a walk through a gallery, or enjoy a play or a movie, you know the feelings that it brings out. Listening to poetry, reading a good book, it's all there. Creativity and imagination right in the places it's supposed to be. And it's clear by what we've been taught that creativity and imagination in those things is where it's at. That's almost a textbook definition. But we forget that sometimes creativity can be found in creating a solution to a very simple problem. How can I take this mess of a classroom with the various tools I have at my disposal and turn it back into a wonderful learning environment in a way that only I can do? How can I take old computers with no storage space and give everyone access and storage to all of their files from any machine in the building, and your work just follows you everywhere in a time where that shouldn't have even have been possible? How do we let the children have an interactive jump rope experience more than just pressing play on a CD player? How can I make the morning announcements that are generally boring and stodgy done in such a way that captures the attention of everyone in the building, and sometimes people out of the building, and makes bad news like an indoor recess sound good? Well, this, my friends, is where the creativity lies. Now, as I say this, I'm certainly not removing or taking away anything from the defined creative and imaginative nature of a pure art form. That would be removing many of the foundations to where creativity and imagination lie at its base. What I am saying is, though, don't stop there. Don't let our sometimes perceived notions of what they should be stop us from missing what they could be and are. Don't miss the forest for the tree. Don't miss the wall for the brick. It begins there, and in the woodworking shop, and in the garden shed, in your hairstyling shop, in the classroom, in your basement, and sometimes even in your car. So as I continue to look back over my life and can see, as we all can, so many different avenues that could have been taken. Maybe do better in school. Maybe I could have gone to university or college in my youth rather than go back as an adult. Or maybe still, and better still, be thankful for the path that life has put me on, because, well, I haven't suffered for the job that I took. And in fact, now would have missed out on many of the opportunities to create and share in the process had I not. Because from my activities as a custodian, I was brought into a leadership and creativity committee within our school board, where we explored creativity, imagination, and restructured leadership from many different areas where we least expected them from. We explored the grassroots through our Lead the Way sessions. From there, that springboarded a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity as a custodian of all people, along with my superintendent friend Peter, who's going to be presenting tomorrow night, and another friend, Frank, a chance to teach global education administrators in a conference in Australia in 2013 the importance of tapping into the non-defined leaders of their boards to find creativity, imagination, and new ways to lead. Well, all of that subsequently led me to being here as part of this scenic group, a place where at times I am often shocked and surprised that I'm here. What am I doing with doctors and teachers and actors? These people, to me, are the real creative ones. But that statement right there is my apprehension sometimes to grab a hold of the creativity that lies within. That's the barrier I designed for myself, maybe out of fear or hiding in the shadows, or sometimes even laziness. That's the obstacle I place before me to excuse me out of the inner talents that we all know we all possess, and I know I possess. That's due in part to me forgetting that creativity and imagination are not built into a job title. They're not built into the work you do, but are naturally and spiritually built into who you are. Not what you do, but how you do it. So I try now to watch more closely and carefully as I do the work I do, or the activities I'm involved in, or even the most boring of tasks. Ever take a moment to watch yourself in the mirror and how you brush your teeth? Try it. If you haven't done it, try it. Focus on what you're doing with each move. We all brush our teeth with the same basic tools, but you would be amazed at the creativity you have and how you fluidly move a toothbrush around your mouth, and sometimes the speed at which you do it without poking yourself in the eye or knocking the tooth out. Do you ever make faces at yourself? Do you stare and ponder in those few moments while you're sticking your tongue out or Googling an eye somewhere, the meaning of life? Well, when you're done, do you simply dismiss it as just being silly and thankful nobody saw that? Well, there's creativity. But do take a moment and think about the most basic things you do, even such mundane tasks as cleaning. This is kind of the heart of where your imagination and creativity are born. It's not always in something that's as dramatic as a painting. And while I do wish I could paint or write a book or a poem, play an instrument, or even act, I've come to realize that when I doubt that I'm creative, I simply need to take a look at, how I've set up my office to do my work, or how we design our front yard and where to place the flowers and other greenery. Creativity and imagination is not just some concept that exists somewhere in the ether, only to be gifted on the few who call themselves an artist. Creativity and imagination exist in the very fabric of how you choose what clothing to wear, how you style your hair, and how you rise to each occasions in your life. We have in this journey with Scenic over the last 2 years been exploring through different idea jams and presenters what it is to think about, apply, and use creativity and imagination in the different sessions that we've had. We have seen and heard many different stories from many different backgrounds. We've dived into the past, we've looked towards the future, and stood deep in our present in all of the discussions that we've had. So in starting to look at how and where to apply everything into something practical, we don't really need to look much further than simply the here and now. It's not in the title, but in the application. With each session that we've had, I left each one being more enlightened by what I heard. I was amazed, and I still am, at what talent and what expression and passion, not only that our presenters had, but the people like yourselves who participate. Through the discussions we would have, or through the chats that appeared in the messages, we covered a world of exploration. It was talking about the poetry that was written, the piano being played, the walk in the forest, the experience of growing up in a different culture. Each time we met, I could see not only was my mop bucket getting deeper, but it was getting bigger. The creative need to learn more, hear more, and do more was growing. I had a moment too within all of that to reflect, how have we been doing this? Well, it's how we're doing it now. This journey we've been on together, for those of you that have been with us over the course of time, has not been done in person or in a large room. We're not even doing it that way now. These aren't tables full of people with a hum in the room. We've been remote from one another. We're individually in our homes, away from the other. We have been sharing ideas and exploring each other through conversations and chat messages in a way that 3 years ago we wouldn't even consider. Zoom and Google Meet and Spaces and every other online meeting tool has had such a dramatic impact on our lives that now it's so integrated into everything that we can't even imagine a time without it. Sometimes annoyingly so, but we have taken an application and in a time of separation, used it to bring us together. And it's not only that we're not in the same room or in the same space, we're coming from different cities, different provinces and countries. We started as a bunch of strangers and are now a united collective on a quest for where can, where will, and where do we find, believe, and apply our personal imagination and collective creativities. And it's not just the educators or defined creative people that we want to engage. They are, again, part of the fabric that makes up the whole picture. But it's the flooring installer who can lay tile down with ease and perfection and see the end result even before it's laid. It's the hairstylist who can walk, talk, cut, and envision your head in a way that you sometimes can't even see. It's the window washer 30 floors up, not missing a mark in the fluid that he's moving from those windows, and the speed and the agility that it takes to not drop the squeegee. It's the salesperson with every customer who finds different ways to appeal to your need to buy. It's in you when you wake up in the morning and are already planning your day. It's in what you make for dinner, even if you're no master chef. It's how you laid out and designed where your furniture goes in your home. It's even how you cut your grass or on the placement of your patio furniture on your balcony overlooking the city. No matter what you do or what you're doing, your imagination is at play. Your creativity and imagination is always at work. So even those moments when you can't see it, that's sometimes probably when it's working its hardest. It's odd sometimes when I think about all of this and put it into perspective. My wife, who is online with me here, works also for our school board and as an itinerant educational assistant. It's her job to analyze classroom situations with students in crisis and develop plans and strategies to help the teachers, the other EAs, and the support staff in the room manage their particular situations. But many times, as recently as last night, we will sit and discuss and often laugh about our lack of creativity and imagination and wish in our discussions that we had more of an art-like nature. Yet, and almost ridiculously, her job is 100% creativity and imagination. And how fast we miss that because it's not clearly defined. Creating programs for students, finding ideas and better methods for teachers and other support staff, building structures that didn't exist. This isn't a giant painting on the wall. This isn't a song being performed, but it is an endeavor each day in each new school to take sometimes a very negative situation for both the teachers and the students and turn it into a successful learning environment. But how quickly we miss that. As I said earlier, we often look for the definition of creativity and imagination and park ourselves there. But as the world continues to change around us and we can continue to take a look at new and better ways to teach and engage our children, we cannot forget that as adults, we too need to be able to not only be lifelong learners, but also be deep rooted in ensuring our creative capacities and imagination potentials are constantly in focus. From your drive into work to how you go to bed, everything you do has some form of creativity or imagination built into it. This is how we put it into play: by looking, watching, and thinking, by paying closer attention to everything you do, watching your designs flow from the simple, and by playing it out in all of your work and your activities. We very easily get caught up and drawn into the everyday. Get up, go to work, eat, sleep, and repeat. We sometimes can very often start to live for the weekends that fly by so quickly we don't even notice them before again we're right back into the grind. We convince ourselves more often than not that we don't have time. And this part in particular is not for the avid readers or the garage band artists or the sideline hobbyists, but for those who don't see the potential in the very simple. It's changing not just what you do, but how you do it. It's taking a different perspective on the everyday. It's moving past that uphill climb and seeing the slide down. It's in the changing of perspective where the basis of imagination lives, where our creativity is born and where our inner passions to create, to think, to write, to act, to sing, and to play are born every day that we live. So let's talk for a moment about practicality and application. I'm a firm believer and always have been that theory is a very great concept, but it's meaningless without some way of actually making something work. There's no real point in an idea that you came up with if you can't find some way of making it work somehow, or at least strive to try to make it work. Think about this for a moment. You design and think of a shelf in your head, a beautiful shelf that you will use to put pictures on, plants on, mementos, personal things to you. This is your creation. Your imagination came up with this. But if it only ever stays in your head, it only ever is a dream. Well, if the idea was to dream about a shelf, the shelf has no way of holding the box of items you have in your that needs a shelf. So we put the idea into motion. Well, there's one thing I've learned over the course of my life. I am no carpenter. I have enough trouble putting an IKEA shelf together that comes with instructions, albeit bad ones. But if it's in the box, I'm going to find a way to mess it up somehow. So to me, if it can't be held together with duct tape, decking screws, and tie wraps, it cannot be done. But I digress. So clearly then, that's not where my strength lies. But that's not the point. We're talking about application. It's about taking the concept, the idea, the creation, or the dream and putting it into motion. Well, the solution is very simple, my friends. Open your doors, open your mind, open your heart. Even when you've built yourself into a corner, made sure your box was safe and closed, oh, the light will always get in. You don't need to be a painter to paint. You don't need to be a writer to write. You don't need to be a carpenter to build. So while I do recognize I'm never going to build a shelf that anyone would ever, including me, want hanging on a wall, well, unless of course you want it to fall on you, I do know how to be imaginative enough to take shelving and turn it into an outdoor deck. Sure, it may have lasted only the one season before the rain and got to it, but in the few short months of summer, my 10-minute deck was great. This is about taking the ideas, your imagination, and your dreams and simply walking them out, one small step at a time. Don't let the definition be your block. Don't let you get you. Practicality in motion does not mean that you have to go to school to learn it. Doesn't mean that you have to practice to perfect it. It simply means taking a few short moments of your day to sit here even and listen to me. It's making a conscious effort to not close your mind, but let your creativity come out and shine. One of the things I wanted to be when I grew up, aside from actually wanting to be a teacher, was a writer. I had dreams of being able to share stories and create interesting adventures. With teaching, it was a passion to do it differently, to be able to reach out to the students like me and find their point of learning. But in both cases, I made choices that academically did not lead in either direction. So I abandoned the idea of doing either and settled into what I thought was going to be a mundane existence. But to my surprise, honor, and joy, I've had the opportunity to teach. I've had the opportunity to write far beyond any means, and I've even had the opportunity to act in my teaching and writing moments. I'm a health and safety trainer for my department, and I have to create my own content based on the rules of our job. I not only have to write my material, but generate the presentation and actually present it. So while I've never got to live out my dream of being a defined writer or defined teacher, I have managed to create and do within a job that, like I said earlier, didn't seem very creative and didn't seem to need much imagination, but yet oddly, there it is. So as we hit the ground running with where your creativity is, don't look for it where you expect to find it. Look for it in the places you least expect it. Ever sing in the shower in your car? Ever lose track of the fact that you're singing in your car? And then when you look over to the car beside you, they're busy standing there or staring at you, watching you? Well, they're my fellow creative ones, is where you play it out. I would invite you to make every move you make a creative. Let your imagination fly even when you're simply taking out the garbage. The world is your playground, one step at a time. There is no one solution. There is no one idea. Just a shot in the dark to look for where you least expect it at times where you can be the most surprised to find it. But with that, sometimes it isn't even that you find it within yourself. Think for a small moment about a maple tree. Tall, grown, it's doing its natural thing. When left alone, it provides shade, it provides wood, it supplies and cleans air. It does its job. But when somebody taps into it and explores its depth, it holds on to something more that wasn't seen at first sight. It now can also provide a sweet and delicious treat that with some work, okay, maybe a lot of bit of work, produces a great outcome over and above what it was just naturally doing. All of that might be missed if somebody wasn't tapping into the more potential. On this subject, I am no expert. I am not trained professionally in creativity. I didn't get a BA in imagination, and I am certainly no theorist. But what I do know is just waking up and moving, getting yourself around, Doing the things you do each and every day is where the story begins. What's even better is it begins over and over and over again. You need not be a title. Sometimes just being a cog in the bigger system is good enough, because even that cog makes the whole thing work and has something to offer no matter how big or how small. As I look back and reflect on my journey, in the same way that I can be surprised that I'm creative, I'm still equally surprised that I've had the opportunity to be here with you all this evening, to share this experience and my thoughts. And I'm thankful that you've been patient with me. I'm grateful to be able to listen to the others in this conference and learn, to grow, and to feel. I figured, of all things, that the school custodian would one day be part of a committee talking about creativity and imagination, but yet here we are. So as we continue with our evening and our conference over the next 2 evenings, I want you to walk through each session thinking, well, how does this relate to me? Michael's question is great. Where do I tap in? Look into your life and see where your creativity and imagination lie, because you might be very surprised that indeed, while you're mopping up, you may find it somewhere in that mop bucket. So I hope as you continue this evening, and as you join us again tomorrow, that you realize not only are you part of the greater mission, you add to each of our personal stories as well, because this really is a moment that will happen this way only once. This is a once in a lifetime moment to share this story at this time with all of you who are here. So finally, to bring it back to the beginning, I did end up finishing my cleaning section that evening. I could only stare into the mop water for so long before I knew I was going to be late. There was still more work to be done, as there always is. But the rest of that evening flew by. The rest of the week flew by. There was no longer a boring and never-ending job ahead of me. Even though the job itself didn't change, I was still cleaning. It was still routine. The expectations never wavered, and it was still the same. But I wasn't. A world of opportunities had opened up. Didn't happen overnight, but it grew, and with each change, it got stronger and stronger, just like each time that we meet. So there you have it. I thank you for staying with me. Nothing fancy, nothing mind-blowing, just some simple things from a school custodian. But my final words for you this evening are this. The next time that you're standing there beside your proverbial custodial cart, take a look down into that mop water. What you'll see staring back at you through the darkened water is you looking right back. Nothing less and everything more. Your creativity and imagination is staring you in the face, sometimes right there in the surface of that mop bucket. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stan. That was wonderful. That was really inspirational, and you hit on so many wonderful points. We have 10 minutes before the next session, so I don't know if we have some comments or people have any questions or anything they would like to add or say following that session. Yes, Michael?
Stan, that was an incredibly inspirational message that you gave us, and I can't think of a better way of which to lift this entire conference and festivities off the ground the way that you have. And so it's with hesitation that I ask you this somewhat prosaic question. Stan, in your early days, when you said you were spending some time cleaning classrooms and school hallways at night, presumably when no one else was in the building, or not very many people were in the building. So at any time when you were cleaning a classroom or a hallway or any particular part of the school, did you stop and imagine about all of the activities and people who intermingled in those spaces earlier that day, and what interminglings there might be the next day? And did you imagine ever what they might be? You know, it's a bit like being in an empty cathedral and wondering what goes on in there when people are there, or an empty theater and wondering what the music was like in the past. You know, did you ever think about that in the empty silence, if I can use that term? Did you fill it with your own imaginings?
So it's funny when you sit at different perspectives in life, because I love how that question is framed, and my head's going through all of these things. And in the happy moments in my job, I would sit there and lament about the fact that I should have done better in school, because I could picture myself at the front, like, you know, a properly organized room. I could picture myself there. Here's how I would set it up, or I'd appreciate how each teacher did things. And, you know, you could see how kind of the day would run through. It's like when you watch a movie and, you know, the person is kind of panning around and you can see life spinning around them. So in my happy moments at work, I had tons of that. But because in the cog of the system that I was, what you tended to get was a lot of, I cleaned this room last night, why the hell does it look like this today? Right? So you tend to get a whole different perspective on things, as to, by the time I get at things at that point, you know, things are in disarray. I spend 8 hours by myself putting everything in that building, because I worked in the school by myself at that point. Like, I worked in a 34,000 square foot building by myself. So I spent all night cleaning like 26 classrooms, 8 different bathrooms, the library, the office. I put this whole building back, only to every day I show up, it looks the exact same or worse from when I left it the day before, right? It's like now, even as a grown-up, because I do that for a job, I'll go in a restaurant, you know, we're all sitting there waiting for our food, and, you know, well, I'm the person who I'm testing things. Well, who dusted this and who's cleaned under that, right? So you have a very different perspective about that. It's like going into hotel rooms. We're all kind of leery about that. Yeah, I know exactly what I'm looking for and where. But even in that, to get back to the point of the question, even in that, there was always something where I could see bigger than what the picture was. I knew pretty much at some early points in my life that I purposely kind of positioned myself to be like I was a deficit to me, but that part of my goal, and that's why I said my creative journey over my life and over my job, is to make sure that I'm not limited by simply my title, right? I want to be bigger than what's happening. So it's about infusing things into where you are, so that, yeah, it was a cleaning job at the time, and sometimes it appeared to be thankless, but the minute I changed my perspective to be part of the picture and look at it from a whole different viewpoint, yeah, that changed the whole basis of the job. Like, I'm 45 years old and I've been with our school board since I was 15. Like, I you know, if I could retire, I could retire next year. I've been with the system for 30 years, right? So that's a long time to appreciate at such a young age, just kind of where we were to where we are.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Michael. We have time for one more question. If anyone has another question or comment they'd like to share at this time. There's some wonderful things in the chat as well, comments and suggestions. Anyone else have something they'd like to share? Anybody? Yes. Sorry. Yes. Sure.
It was the way you were talking made me think about hanging out the laundry, and there's so many million ways you can hang up laundry, and whether it's on a line or folded, and whether people are going to see it or not, and so how much are you going to invest into it. And I always claim laundry as my chore in the house because of that. It's fun. One time I couldn't do it just recently, and I asked my husband to hang it up. And when I came home, I was like, oh my God, what a mess. Like, oh, that's terrible. I had to redo it. Anyway,
I love it.
Thought I'd share.
That's funny how those things work, right? Thank you.
Stan, that's great. And I just, it was such a wonderful session, and a couple of things came forward or came through for me. One of the things is that in terms of inspiration, often I find when I'm doing something that's mundane or slow or a kind of quiet activity, like maybe washing the dishes or something like that, that's when I'll really, my imagination really works. So I can understand, like, if you're doing kind of a repetitive job too, just kind of like your mind is kind of free to think of things like that. And also, I think for me, one of a very major definition or a significant definition of creativity is problem solving. You know, no matter where no matter what field we're talking about, no matter, you know, and all of that in all different ways. So in your job, you'd be doing a lot of problem solving and resolving things and so on. So I think that, you know, you've become very masterful at that and applying those skills in so many different ways. So those are two things that really came through for me in your talk this evening. Anyone else? We've got a couple of minutes, just 2 minutes left. If anyone else has something quick they'd like to mention at this point. If not, oh, sorry.
Hi.
Gerard?
Yeah, it's interesting because I worked in a grocery store many decades ago doing cleaning and that. And as you were talking, Stan, I was thinking of the rhythms that, and I hadn't even thought about, art school and things like that at that point. I was still pretty young. But it's, the rhythm of, buffing the floor. And it was interesting because it was usually at the end of the day when there was no one in the store. So it was like, there was that kind of rhythm, but then there was even the idea of visually understanding the space, thinking about it now, it's like this kind of spatial awareness and stuff. So yeah, it was, and I only stayed there for a year, so.
That's great. Thank you so much, Trevor. That's a great comment as well. All kinds of parallels there in terms of the work and what happens when we do those kinds of tasks. I'd like to thank you again, Stan. It was absolutely wonderful to hear your life journey and how that fits in so wonderfully with the everyday aspects and qualities and existence of creativity. You're right. Everything we do we're part of that process, and we tend to only focus on certain kinds of definitions. So thank you for bringing us around and making us aware of a much wider application and much more embracing concepts around creativity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm now going to turn this over to Michael Wilson, who's the other host this evening, because we have a session starting at 8 o'clock, and Michael will be introducing that, and I guess just giving the kind of maybe the title of it and so on, but and then we'll hear from that group. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. So with Stan, we began with our feet firmly on the ground, and through Stan's incredible storytelling, we had a liftoff into our shared space together. So I want you all to imagine now that we're in that shared space together. And remember that the title of the scenic 2-day session celebrating World Creativity Week is called Limitless. It's not called infinity. Infinity implies, obviously, an unending expanse of harmony. Limitless implies limits to be overcome. And in many ways, the creative process is simply about that, encountering limits and needing or wanting to overcome them. And so for the next little while, we're going to take a huge chance and impose some limits and some barriers, some of them quite literally, and see what we can come up with, because we don't know. We're going to be involved in the barriers of place and geography, 4 different time zones, to create something together, spontaneity. And I don't even know the sequence of events that will occur. I can only tell you that it involves the beginnings of a series of paintings that Mary did in an exhibition that she called Limitless. We're going to see those paintings. We're also going to see something of the video art of Charles Pan, who's with us tonight. The work that Mary originally did is grounded in her paradise location near Wolfville, Nova Scotia. And we have a location involved tonight, also Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario, and Vancouver, British Columbia. So with that series of paintings that Mary originally did, which is a spark for us all, and the fantastic video that Charles made of it, we're going to have now some kind of presentation and improvisation in dance and in music, all happening sequentially together. And to anchor it for you, here is one of the artists involved and the lead in this session. Ladies and gentlemen, Alexis Milligan. Alexis.
Oh. Thank you, Michael. What an intro. That was fantastic. Hi, good evening, everyone. I am sitting here in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario, and I am joined by my three colleagues who are diving off the deep end with me in an idea that I just wanted to see. I've been so curious about Zoom, about this life online we've been living, and what our boundaries and what the limitations or limitless options might be available to try to play in this medium, in this space. So trying to use the technology to our advantage, we are going to have a go at something that none of us have done before. We are literally going to use you all as an opportunity to try something as our guinea pig audience, to say, maybe there's something in this. Let's just see. The thing that we need you to do, though, there is a little bit of homework involved. The first thing is, can you please make sure you're all muted? That's number one. Number two is a little trickier, but I'm hopeful that the way that I talk you through this will be easy. If you are down on the bottom of your screen, of your Zoom screen, there is an option to turn your video off. So if you turn your video off, hover your cursor over your own window that might have your name or your image. When you do so, you will have three little dots, and on those three little dots at the bottom is a little drop-down menu. It will say hide non-video participants. I'm hoping that everyone should see just Mingyu and I. If you could just put a thumbs up in the chat, or just in the chat, say yes. Hopefully, you will just be able to see Mingyu and I. If not, if you are having a problem, you can also just hover over my video, and it will say on the three dots, it'll say pin video, but we are preferring this setup. So hopefully everyone has found it. Okay. Mingyu, I'm just going to turn this. Okay. And I am going to, you are going to unmute. I'm going to mute. Okay. And we'll see how it goes. Thanks, everyone. You can come back with your video on. Try to see if I can there we go. There. We did it! There we go. So that was our art project. Lauren is our admin helper, and she's going to put just in the chat a way to bring your show non-video participants. Sometimes you have to go to your video settings, which is down at the bottom by the camera. There's a little arrow. You have to open that up. So just to bring back so that you can see everyone's squares. If that's helpful for you, or you just feel free to turn your video back on. It's your choice. Anyway, so I just want to introduce these great collaborators. We literally just had this idea, and they dove off the deep end with me on this one, which was really so first and foremost, Mary's paintings. That was it was really amazing to have a chance to work with Mary's paintings. Mary paints on these giant canvases, like these big, huge canvases that take up a huge workshop space. She also does smaller ones, but there's just an absolute, the vistas that she works with, which is part of the inspiration. We were trying to find a way to capture that. So Mary had an exhibit. I don't know, do you want to just mention a little bit about the exhibit, Mary, that happened in the summer?
Well, I have to say that you know, it really, all those paintings were done during COVID. And I ended up being isolated at my cottage, which is on the Minas Basin, but it looks like I'm on the open ocean here. And it's very exposed location. So I see the sky out of every window, and I've always been fascinated with the sky. I tend to gravitate to it and find it extremely exciting and kind of a metaphor for many things in my life. So that's why there's so many of them. And also I was on my own. I spent last 2 years by myself almost, which I'm not an antisocial person, so it was quite tricky. But I had my paintbrush and I had 2 cats. So I did do a lot of artwork, and there's a gallery here, fairly close to where I am, near Wolfville, and they offered, or actually I was approached about doing an exhibition of the work that I was creating. So I was happy to share that with them. But yeah, so that's how that came about. And I struggled with the name for a long time. I had all kinds of different names for it. And I finally came up with Limitless in the sense that it was just kind of this open sky, this very open sensation about life. And it seemed to me that the last couple of years were, you know, in terms of my thoughts and my artistic practice, that it really was very wide ranging. And yeah, so that's how I got around to that. And I tend to work in, those images are made in a number of different ways. There's oil paintings there, and water. I work in acrylic and oils and pastel and mixed media, and I also am a printmaker and a few other things, but I didn't make no prints in that collection. But there's and watercolor is also something I really love to work with. So anyway, it was kind of a wide array of explorations going on in those pieces, and provided an inspiration for this wonderful video idea that Alexis had. And again, we thought about music. It sort of evoked a number of things. And so, and Charles got involved with us as well about the sound that could be possible, and doing a recording, like taking the images and working it into, like blending them together so it would kind of work with music as well. So
maybe Charles, maybe Charles, you could tell us a little bit about it. Charles Pan. So I should identify that Mary is sitting in just outside of Wolfville, Nova Scotia. Charles, where are you?
I'm in Fredericton.
Fredericton, New Brunswick.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about the video making. What inspired you there?
Okay. So maybe I introduce myself a little bit.
Yeah.
Actually, my first major, when I first time went to college and the university, I was a piano student. My major is a classical piano. So very much like Mingyu. So then I graduated, and that time I was in China. So in mainland China, we don't have a lot of job related to a pianist at that time. So that's why I changed my job into a journalist. So I working in a media industry for almost 18 years. Then during this time, I was a journalist and mainly doing documentary and so the feature story, something like that. Then, so actually a little bit changed my career into visual arts and also storytelling this side. Then I went to Australia and also went to Europe as a on-site researcher. And then 2014, I came to Canada. I studied new media, multimedia, and also filmmaker here. Then after that, last year, I very luckily became Mary's PhD student. So now, yeah, it is my little background. So then when I saw this idea, actually, Alex told me this idea. I think this is a wonderful idea, and it's really gives me a lot of space to imagine. Because in my background, so music and visual arts and also even performance arts, I all touched a little bit. So in my mind, those different art forms, they have kind of very tightly connection together. So I just wanna, when I see Mary's picture or Mary's painting, so those texture, the color, the movements, the space, all those things, and comes to me, it's not only just from the painting's perspective, also from the other visual arts and the music and movements, those like elements in my mind. So that's why when I make the video, I try to follow Mary's the texture, how she painting on the cave, and also how those clouds they move. And I imagine, even though those pictures are still, but I still can imagine at that time how they changing. The last minute and the next minute, they're different, right? So everything is moving. So that's why I put those things, a lot of movements on it. And also I try to make all those colors, especially in the music as well. So the color texture, they working perfectly matched. And also I'm also imagine how Alex will dancing in front of those images. So that's why this is three rows for me. So the principles to make those together and put the images together, make a video. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And so I'll just ask Mingyu a little bit about tell us a little bit about you, where you are, and just your thoughts on this process.
Hi everyone, this is Mingyu. I'm in Coquitlam, BC. I'm now a PhD candidate in 7th University. I play piano, I teach piano, I work on piano things every day. It's lucky that it's my favorite job and my favorite work, my favorite sound in the world. Charles, you are great because I could totally feel the rhythm in your film. You know, when I play the piano, when I improvise with Alexis dance and your video, I could totally feel that there are two movements there. One is dancing and the other one is all the textures and the movement from the video. Yeah, and from the color. Yeah, so you're very, very successful. It's great. And it's very interesting for me because I was actually wondering when I play, I was actually wondering how much I could focus on myself. Because I have to look at the screen, I have to feel the movement and look at how you dance, like how the video move, but I still need to compose in my head, right? To play the music. So it's a challenge for me that I need more trust on myself, on my own creativity, what is there, and I just need to play it out. I have no time to doubt, to think. So I can just share that spontaneity of all of the artistic movement with all of you. That is very profound. And when I remember Charles told us the video is like 4 minutes and like about 30 seconds long.
Yeah.
When I heard that, I thought, oh, it's long. How could I play such a long piece? And then I found it super short. Yeah, I found it short.
And also very interesting is for Alex at the very beginning, I think you set up as a background. I'm thinking because sometimes your image will blend into the image. At that time, I'm thinking it's not good. But when I watch it, it's actually very good. It's kind of like impressionism picture.
Alexis, you were part of the painting.
But this is so, one of the things that I thought, this is sort of this conversation, which I hope, that we can embark on tonight, this is just the leaping off the deep end with an idea. And one of the things that came out of this is I actually am using my partner's laptop because for some reason, the Zoom on my laptop will not let me change my background. So we were having this whole thing where we actually had it set up where Charles had it as his background and then was going to like slink out of the way and then Mingyu was going to play and I was going to dance with like a window behind me or something. And so it was just like, but it was this thing that Mingyu wrote. She said, no, we have to figure this out. We need to know. And so it was just this encouragement and this support to keep just see what we could do with it. This crazy idea where you just kind of go, is this even possible? Everybody just working towards this common idea in a situation where we wanted to get, something together, but also knowing that it might fall flat on its face. And so, trying to be okay with if it was just going to fail, maybe it was just a good attempt at finding out that doesn't work. But when I was doing what I could see, again, when Charles had it on the background and he was there and then he would disappear, I just sort of, I do need the background because I can start to play with appearing and disappearing into this is what's so beautiful about this technology is I can move within movement. And so you end up getting these layers of, and like you say, that Charles, about that, it's not just that each art form or artistic practice lives in its own silo. It's not in its own discipline. They are completely interconnected. So there's movement in the brushstrokes and there's movement in sound and there's movement in the video and then there's the way that we're hearing the vibrations and the colors that come out of music and then colors that are reflected in the paintings and the way that those are assembled together and being able to be physically present inside of those colors and those and textures. And so we end up sort of getting a chance to go further into this idea that there are so many connections inside of sort of these artistic practices, but really it's about communication. Fundamentally, it's about completely non-verbal communication. This is communication that is through movement, through sound, and through image. It is those three things that are coming at us on a sensory level that allow us to feel and experience other things. And so we get to sensations. And while that might not be a literal sensation, or you might feel something, it's not something that is something that you could even put your finger on, but it is something that you are somehow, again, your imagination is meeting us in the playground. So we are in the playground trying something wild and new with our, in just coming together. And this was improvised. We hadn't seen Charles's video, by the way. We had like seen clips of it, but we haven't sat and watched this all the way through. I think Charles sitting with Mary's paintings is the person who's sort of been with, and Mary painting the paintings, I'd say has been with the actual paintings the longest. Charles put the film together based on what he saw, but Mingyu and I, we didn't actually get to study the video. We didn't like rehearse and go, oh, move here and do this here and sort of structure it that way open, because it was this ability to communicate literally across the country in the same moment of time. And the idea that might even be possible is like, we're all communicating through this medium, thinking and feeling and being affected by each other. That's the other really important thing, is we are affecting each other and we are being affected as we engage. It is moving us. It is creating sensation. And we're all experiencing that at the same moment. And so that communication, this is my fascination. My fascination and the focus of my work is about this exchange that happens between us, about where we live inside each other's imaginations. And we actually are together more than we are apart. And so what you experienced through this, and that you feel, the work that we're doing cannot be complete without that. We meet each other in this sacred space, even over the ether webs. So we are in your rooms and you are in ours. And so we have this opportunity to look at really fundamentally what is communication and how do we actually engage, and really our imaginations and our creative spaces. That's the real connection. And so we are caught with a lot of language, we're caught with a lot of numbers, we're caught with a lot of frames, a lot of boundaries, when in fact you can have a relationship and share space with someone and no speaking or no literal sense of communication actually occurs. It's just us in a room thinking, feeling, breathing together. There's lots of hands up, so I want to hear. Fred, I saw your hand up.
Well, where to start? There were so many questions forming, and some of you answered some of those questions. But Alexis, I wanted to ask first, your choice not to dance in front of a green screen, was that deliberate, or did it happen and then you started to blend into the background of Mary's painting and Charles' video?
So I don't have a green screen. And so I just have the, except on the thing, it says, do you want to have a green screen? And so by just choosing it as the background, again, I was able to stand in front of it and be there. So suddenly it was moving around me. And I was, in the beginning, I was also really close. And I just felt like I needed to be quite a bit further away. So we also worked with that a little bit. But yeah, it was mostly just about trying to get it all set up.
Well, an observation then as a participant, when you and Mingyu were combining with Mary's work, when Charles chose to zoom in on some of the brush strokes, I sat there going, when have I ever zoomed in to look at an artist's brush strokes? Because normally I'll pull back in order to see the whole thing. And I thought, oh, these are very interesting pieces. So that made me start to look at Mingyu's finger technique. And then I started to look at your dance techniques. And when you chose to dive your hands into the clouds and then merge out of it, I thought, oh, this is working and it's making me think in totally new ways. Very powerfully done.
Very cool. Very cool.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Thanks, Fred.
Yeah.
Kathy.
First of all, thank you very much for this. I started working in this way about 40 years ago with writers, dancers, sound poets, musicians, videographers, visual artists, and doing performances at Harborfront and different places, and doing workshops for my students in the United States and Canada and that. And first of all, Mary, it's really great to see your painting. You know, really great. And Alexis, it was really great to see you moving in and out of Mary's painting. I mean, it just really flowed. And Mingyu, I have some questions for you all. So anyway, I find this really exciting, and I'd like to watch it again.
Have it recorded so we can.
Yeah, I know. I can go online and watch it again.
I hope I can watch it.
Yeah, but to meet each other out in space, you know, when you're working in this way, and as you're moving and playing and seeing Mary's work, every little nuance affects something else. So it's just, you broaden your horizons through others and through the other arts by working in this way. And so Mingyu, when you were playing, did you find that you're bouncing off of Alexis and Mary and sort of moving back and forth between them? Because there was this flow that happened that was really nice between all of this. So Mingyu, I'd like you to respond first, and then I want to ask Alexis. Okay, all right. Mingyu,
yes.
How were you feeling, and when you were working in this way, watching Alexis move to Mary's painting, how were you moving back and forth between them, or how were you doing that?
Okay, actually, I was thinking about one question, that is, who was leading whom? When I play, I just told everyone that when I play, I could feel the rhythm, I could see the movement. But I'm wondering if, for example, Alexis, when you hear my music, were you changing your movement? Because you
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, is it was going, it's sort of flinging yourself between
yes
all of it, and sort of letting it affect and grab you at any one moment.
So it's more like feel the thing and just let it be.
I think it is like kind of like an interactive action. So like when I see Mary's painting, then I did my reaction to those painting. I found some color, and I found some movement. I noticed some texture. They are very different. So I tried to display all those things in certain rhythm. Then this is the first reaction. Then Mingyu, because they didn't get this video before. It's actually, I just give them before this section, because this is we are testing how we can do when we first see those things. Then when Mingyu see the images, I think just like she says just now, she said, although she can feel the rhythm, right? She can feel those movement, the color changing, and maybe then she can change her harmonic way and change different chords and change different speed and put some different like a color tone in her music. Then when she also see Alexis dance, that it also will influence on Mingyu's piano performance, right? There are in a lot of different ways. The only one cannot do is me, because I have already done all this.
That is a very interesting way to communicate to each other, because when I play, it's impossible for me to stare at the screen, right? So sometimes I have to look at my own fingers. Sometimes I look at the screen. So it's kind of like switching, like shifting the attention So I guess sometimes you need to like listen to me, but sometimes when I look at you, you're leading me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And
it's all happened like
yeah, it's all happened because
in moments.
because the movement of the paintings, because I was trying to see what I mean at the same time, because we've only like literally tried this like yesterday for 5 minutes is no, it was today at 5 o'clock, right? But it was like I was also trying to like experiment at the same time, like trying to figure out what the boundaries were of what I was able to do with this background and the way that I could interact with. So I was trying to solve the paintings and being in the technology at the same time and then listening. And so it's just this constant interface of just letting myself be affected, being like taking, and then sometimes, like you say, putting a gesture out there that I felt was that impulse, but it was something that was moved to do, you know?
There's a lot of trust too that you
Yeah.
get
Yes.
when working with others in this way.
And this is where we have never met in person, any of us.
Yeah.
Like this is like, comes back to what Stan was talking about. And again, Stan, just talking like the sound of your voice booming through the hallways to those students makes like you create feeling, you create that atmosphere, and it comes down to the fact that we've had scenic over, and especially over COVID, is I feel like I know Mingyu, I feel like I know Stan. We have spent so much time together, and then Charles just dove into this project, and it just took that trust. But we've never actually physically been in the same space ever.
Yeah, but
And so there is another, which I'm so intrigued with this technology, which I know pulls us apart and makes things conflicting in so many ways. A lot of online, especially with social media, it's incredibly toxic and really skews a perception of self. But at the same time, we have been able to make meaningful connections in this environment and in this space. And so there is a spirit of bringing your best self into this organization, this group. And in a project like this, you need to be able to dive in and go, I'm okay with not knowing. I'm going to be adaptable. I want to be adaptable because I want to give it a try. And I'm going to work with the people that we're in this team with and just have a go, just try and see what happens. And that kind of just, where might it take me? It feels limitless. It's like you're just sitting on the precipice of a trust fall. It's like you're just going to fall, and why not just see, maybe you'll do a backflip and do an expert dive, but it is that trust, Kathy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it had a very nice edge to it. And because it wasn't super practiced. And so you punched it up a little bit, it had flow. If you did it again, it'd be very different, which is also cool, but in a different way. Anyway, I just want to close off. I just wanted to throw a few things out there, but thank you very much, all of you, for this. It was very enlightening to me. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Kathy. Gerard, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just thinking a couple of observations, I guess, that the whole, and I'm relatively new to Zoom. The job I had, ironically, I'm a digital literacy facilitator with the Canadian Mental Health Association here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. But I've also been involved with community arts, disability arts for more than 20 years. And I do remember Mary coming and giving a talk at NASCAD back in the 90s with Cynthia Taylor. So I don't know if you remember me or not, but I remember that clearly. Anyways, I'm just wondering how much of the kind of, it was almost like a directorial aspect to the audience that was watching this, and part of it's the technology, I guess, but there was in some ways for me, there was kind of displacement that happened. Even though I was watching it, there was like all of a sudden I don't see the rest of the audience. So I'm curious of how much was that like a kind of I can't even talk right now. It's been a long day. Improvisational aspect to this, or is it just something in the planning that you did, or you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I think, I mean, we really, like, we just got together a very few times. It's kind of, I think we've met 4 times. And so Zoom is, I think this was just trying to see if we could make it work. I think that was sort of just the basic part of it was, can we?
I think like this, in the beginning, Alexis and I decided to improvise.
That's right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But we know we have to improvise with the paintings. So we have to decide how we present the paintings. Yeah. So we get Charles to make the film for us. And for our part, we improvise.
Yeah.
And we decide to surprise ourselves. So we did it.
Yes. And I think that and also just to like, what is the medium, like what's possible with the medium? What could we do with it? And Fred's just dropped in a thing on the chat, which is really great, which is, we were absolutely panicked about the possibility of a lag. Like what would happen if the video cut out or there was a lag between the internet, and we just kind of had to go for it and see what would happen. And it's totally possible one of us, the audio could have cut out you think about all the technology problems that happen in a day. And we just sort of went, yeah, they might, and let's just see what happens. And if we have to stop, then that's what we have to do. But at least we gave it we just gave it a crack.
It's almost like a resurgence of the happenings of the 60s, So,
yes. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things. So the other reason why I was sort of prompted to do this was Mingyu presented at our Idea Jam last year on improvisation. I do a lot of improvisation as a dancer. A lot of my choreography and choreographic world has always been founded in improv. I've done a lot of work in other countries, working with other musicians and other artists in sort of similar collaborations, but I've never done it online. Like I've never done it with this medium. So that's what was intriguing to me. And so after Mingyu did her presentation and improvised on the piano at the beginning, and it was absolutely beautiful, crystal clear, I was like, oh, well, that would be great. Like it would, and Mingyu could, this would be so great. And also just wanting to work with her as an artist to be inspired in that improvisational world, to have that chance to work with her. And then I was really taken by Charles's video work, because his work with Mary. So Mary really gets around. She's my master's supervisor as well. So she kind of has a fantastic influence. And I sort of want this, and I hope that this is actually a bit of an ode to Mary, because she is an incredible inspiration and really keeps this huge ball of inspiration in the air. And I was really taken by her paintings, and Charles's video work. I also had a chance to sit in on a presentation that Charles did for the Atlantic Center for Creativity, and just hearing how excited he is when he talks about what it means to make a film and a video, and all of the parts that capture his spirit and the way that he puts these videos together. The passion is so deep. And so it was finding that inspiration from hearing all of these 3 artists inspiring me, saying, I really want to have a chance to work with these people, and could we all find each other in the same space in the same time? So that was another big draw, is just being inspired by someone else that you're working with, and that you get to hear how much they love what they do, like you, Stan.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I just like blow me away, my friend. And just be that thing of, and I think it's good to connect these two pieces, like because I know that what you say, Stan, about the fact that it's not considering yourself creative, because here we are doing art and being creative in these artistic practices, but we are speaking the same language. This is the same. There's nothing different. It's part of the same sense of self, finding one's sense of self inside the work that we do. And so that flexibility and ability to learn and grow from the people that are around you, that is so key, I think. And that is the bridge of us coming together, you know. Yes, Stan, go.
So you said, so this has been wonderful. And you know what's interesting? So I mentioned in my speech that you know, we've been remote, but I forgot that we're remote. So as I was reading about your thing with Mingyu, it's like, oh yeah, you guys are on opposite ends of the country. Like, this isn't like you're just, you know, a couple of cities away, or you know, you're several time zones. So it's amazing how we've managed to do something, and watching all of that stuff. Like, it's different when you can partnership, but even those of us in the same city, like I see Jackie's here with us and Michael's here. So we're in the same city, but because of how COVID has been, we've been remote. But look at what you guys managed to do across the country over a medium where even as a group, we've never met in person as a group. Right, at all. We started this as a few collective bunches of people who knew each other, but look at how close we've come. And even as we do these sessions, right, and as I sit here and watch the people that are here, I go looking for key people to always be there. So one person that comes to mind is Fred Harwood, right? Like, whenever I see Fred in an idea jam, it's like, okay, we're good to go. And the more people that I can recognize, there's several of them, but it's this is how we share. So yeah, I just wanted to point out that, yeah, I forgot that you and Mingyu were so far away, but that, yeah, absolutely amazing. Really good job.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Mingyu-
everybody, it's now
Sorry.
10 minutes before the hour. And so I first of all want to thank very much Alexis, Mingyu, Charles, and Mary for that wonderful second presentation we just had. It was absolutely incredible. Congratulations to you all. And to Stan, to you, thank you so much for lifting us off from the launch pads so effectively at the beginning of the session. We have about 8 minutes and 12 seconds left for this evening, and I'd like to steer the conversation a little bit more in a general way. And that is, first of all, to direct you to the fantastic question. I thought it was fantastic because it was my question. To what extent have your attitudes, views, been strengthened or challenged in play, imagination, creativity, and or innovation? To what extent has there been some kind of challenge or affirmation on any of those on the basis of your experiences tonight, either with Stan's session or with the quartet session, if I can call it that, or any combination of them all? How would you summarize the evening so far? Anyone? Mingyu.
Yes.
Yeah, can I share the image in my mind now?
Yes.
For me, it's like we open the door, walk into the hallway, and we share the hallway. But everyone's hallway is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I love it. It's a
Different.
lovely image, Mingyu. Lovely image.
This
Yeah.
is my imagination.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good.
And this leads to examining the nature of that door that we opened. And what did we think was on the other side before we opened it? Actually, I have to admit, I've got a confession to make now. I had no idea what the four of you were going to do. Absolutely no idea. And I confess to you something else, and that is I got mixed up on the time, and I showed up late for everybody. Isn't that incredible? And I was panicking because Alexis, I knew that you were around because your name was on the slot that you occupy. But I thought, if I've made a mistake about the time, and I knew you were in Niagara-on-the-Lake, what happens if you make a mistake and you don't show up? And I mean, you were there. I knew you were there. And so I thought, okay, this is going to be a session that isn't going to have any dance component to it. It's going to be music. And Charles, I hadn't seen your work at all. I had no idea how that was going to be set up. I mean, you thought you were taking a chance. I'm the one who was taking a chance because I was supposed to pretend I knew what was going on, and I had no idea. It's difficult enough emceeing an evening or a session when you have some idea what's going on. It is frightening when you have no idea what's going on. So I thought I'd admit that to you all now, but I was reassured it was a fantastic evening for me, and again, thank you all for doing that. And for being such an important part of it and launching stuff. Lindsay, what have you got to say?
So I think like tonight, what's resonating now is that trust was mentioned a lot, and doing improvisation and collaboration work, trust is so key. And the other thing that kept coming up for me was access. And the way everybody has access to their tools with such proficiency allowed you to surrender to one another and pull out your tools. And kind of also reminds me about Stan too, your access to your environment, the whole school, which is a community, was part of your improvising your community work and developing that community work creatively in ways that the community probably couldn't even imagine until it was you who was there doing that. And so that's just what I'm thinking about access. And it also came up in talking about the technology, because you never know when in any given moment we're not going to have access. And even Michael, when you're talking about showing up late and that kind of tension that can come over us sometimes, and we suddenly can't access what we usually can fluently, we have to, okay, all right, and bring it to the foreground. This is where I'm at. This is the reality. I'm just trying to land here. And or we don't know, like Alexis, you were introducing it, like we don't know. So I love that the access was, is it going to be accessed or not?
Lindsay, I love your image of surrender. It's a lovely image. We can surrender in love, or we can surrender in fear, but the result's the same in both cases, is it not? Yes, lovely image. We've got about 4 minutes left. Others, summary comments anyone wants to make, or just anything that hits them as a result of what's happened so far this evening. Stan.
It's amazing how fast 2 hours can go by, right? So normally our normally our idea session or idea jams are 1 hour, and we don't have enough time. So I thought 2 hours should be more than enough time. And it's like, we still don't have enough time, right? So this has been absolutely amazing, right? And what's exciting is there's more to come. And it's not just the presenters, it's not just us talking, but it's what people add in, like reading the chat has been fantastic too. Like, I mean, it's amazing what deep things people can say in like a 10-second keyboard warrior moment, right? But this has been an amazing night.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say a few words about that as well, Stan. I mean, again, the purpose of Scenic is that kind of creating spaces that are very informal in a way, but almost improvisational. We play a lot and work off each other, and we love to share that with anyone who comes to the sessions with us, so that everyone is taking part. Everyone has made this evening special by your comments and your suggestions. In every way. So I mean, and maybe it's just like, and I love the work of Keith Sawyer, who talks about teaching as being a form of improv, you know, that you are always pulling things together, different ideas, and seeing what happens. And I think tonight was a great example of that. And certainly the last piece that we did, a challenge, and it really emphasized that idea of improvising and working off each other and listening carefully to each other. I think focusing carefully to hear and to see how the nuances, someone mentioned nuances earlier, like how to kind of pull things together and see what happens. So it was great. Thank you so much. We have, I think, Michael, we're almost at 9 o'clock. Tomorrow we have 2 sessions again, and we're starting at 7, and it goes from 7 to 9, and I'm on the East Coast. So I think that's a different time for people in other places. You have to check your time for those ones. And so we are featuring Peter Gamwell is speaking in the morning, or in that morning in the first session, and then Goran Matic is following that. So there are 2 fantastic presenters, and I think you'll enjoy. Hopefully you'll come tomorrow evening as well. And Michael, any last words that we should share?
Well, I'd just like to comment that it was a varied evening of wide experience this evening, and to share also that, you know, I've become very close to many of you whom I've never met. I haven't even met Stan or Jackie, and we're all more or less in the same city. So it's been an amazing experience for me, and I look forward to the excitement that we can continue tomorrow night. And also to give a nod to Mary and say to her, it's been a pleasure and an honor to host these sessions with her so far, and I look forward to our continued surrendering embrace, Lindsay. Tomorrow, hope to see you all again tomorrow evening.
Take care.
Thank you all very much.
Wonderful. Have a good evening. Bye-bye. Thanks for taking part.
Thank you, everyone.
Welcome.